Brendan Johnson back in studio with us. Time for Taking You Home. Brendan, good morning.
Good morning, Bob.
May I?
Absolutely.
Good deal. We are currently buying our first home and close in about 3 weeks.
Yes.
Oh, I remember this. With the storms that occurred recently, how do we ensure the sellers disclose if there was any storm damage?
Yeah, that's
big one.
That's a big one, especially this time of year. It feels like the last few years especially,
Yeah.
right? We've just gotten hit with flurries of storms.
Yep.
So the question is, when things happen in between after you had your offer accepted and before closing, how does that play out, right?
Right.
And so let's take a step back. A seller is required to disclose anything that may adversely affect your use and enjoyment that they know about, right? And so you run into a lot of situations where did they have storm damage that they're all aspects on the continuum of sellers knowing about hail damage, storm damage, any of the above.
Yeah.
The house may be vacant. The sellers may have moved out and have
Sure.
no knowledge, right? So it's really incumbent on you, unfortunately, as the buyer, to do your due diligence. Like if you know that a storm's gone through,
Okay.
to do your due diligence to inspect or have someone go out and see if there was any damage prior to closing. You cannot rely on the seller, first of all, even being at the home,
Right.
or their knowledge of any storm damage.
So I drive up and a tree is down in the yard, right? Or maybe it's leaning on the roof of
Yeah.
the garage or something like that. What do you do?
Yeah, I mean that's those are always the easier ones to
Right.
be aware of, right? So obviously you do a final walkthrough. The goal is to be aware of any sort of damage prior to the day of closing,
Okay.
right? Which is the final walkthrough. But you need to resolve the seller is responsible for any damage or their insurance that happens prior to closing.
Okay.
But where you really get in, so the tree on the roof, those are easier, not easy, but it's more black and white on
Yeah,
what
yeah.
the solution is. Does it create a lot of inconvenience and a lot of delays and life circumstances? Absolutely.
Sure.
Where you run into trouble though is where I always use the example of hail or storm where contractors working on the neighbor's house, they come over and say, oh, all the homes in the neighborhood had hail damage, yours
Right.
probably does too.
Right.
Well, that was never disclosed. The seller, for whatever reason, didn't think they had damage or weren't there, and now it turns out there is damage. Those are the situations that you try to avoid. So what you want to do is if you suspect any sort of wind damage or anything, you need to, with your agent, have someone come out and do their due diligence, inspect and look it over
Okay.
before closing if possible.
Somebody's got to go up on that roof. Who is that somebody?
The first thing I would do is if I'm working with the buyer, the buyer's agent, I would ask the seller's agent if they suspect any damage and if they are getting a contractor out there. If the answer is no, then I would ask, is it possible for the buyer to have a contractor come out and
Sure.
look at it?
Yeah.
So at some point, it's a contractor. It's who initiates that, the seller or the buyer. That's really up for discussion. But I think if the buyer's concerned, it needs to happen on one way or the other.
Yeah. So I was just talking with the guys from BD Exteriors
Yeah.
last week on the home show,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And quality contractor all the way around.
Yep.
Finding that quality contractor is paramount, right? Don't go with the hail gypsies and all that kind of stuff. This is Bob Hughes saying this right now, okay? But I mean, I'm wondering, right? I've got to get somebody up there to take a look at this roof, and with all the apps that are available now, where hail is gone and all that kind of stuff, you got to deal with insurance companies and all of that. And if my house that I'm buying is right between two other houses that have really been hammered by the hail, it only makes sense that mine probably is going to be too, right?
Yeah, it's very likely that it is. And you're right, the insurance companies have the technology now where they
Yeah.
know exactly where the storms hit, where the hail hit. But to your point on the integrity of the contractors, we refer to, there's that phrase storm chasers. There's a
Right,
difference between the contractors locally that you referenced
Always
and some of
go
these
local.
Yes, because it does make a difference if it's the proper assessment of damage versus looking for damage and stirring, emotions up to say
Right.
there's damage when there's not.
Right.
What I would say is this, is if there is legitimate damage, it can be cured with an insurance claim. We've had numerous instances where the sellers make an insurance claim. You can still close.
Right.
The repairs can happen after closing.
Right.
It's much more challenging to get a seller to work with a seller to initiate a claim. Although it's still possible, it is not ideal or recommended to initiate a claim after
the fact, right?
So
okay, so let me ask you this: money is going to be needed to repair something.
Yes.
Whether it's whatever, doesn't really matter. Is that where escrow can come into play?
it can, and there's a lot of factors that determine how the solution is.
Yeah, who does that?
Yeah, so this is the importance of having an experienced agent, in my opinion, to do this, because there's a lot of factors. There's the lender. The lender's going to have a big say on if they'll allow, if they require the repairs to be done prior to closing, after. If there's an insurance claim, what are they paying? Is the lender going to require additional funds in escrow or not? There's a lot of questions, and you need someone that's been through that process. It really makes all the difference in the world trying to navigate, because there's a lot of scenarios on what the lender requires, who the insurance company is, what's going to be paid when, and so on. So it's important to work with someone that's been down that road before.
Boy, I hope it never happens, right? But when it does, you want to be working with VoigtJohnson Real Estate. You've got 20 agents out there to take care of you. How do we do that?
Online at VoigtJohnson.com or 320-774-2400.
Brendan Johnson, always a pleasure, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.